started. Thank you guys for coming to this talk. So this is called Looking Good, UI Verification in iOS. My name is John. I work for Yelp. This talk is like mostly technical. We're going to go through some coding examples. If you're not technical and want to just get up and leave, I won't be offended. That's totally cool. So I'm going to show you guys something that I've been building mostly in the last couple weeks. It's to address a specific problem we've been having at Yelp. So with our, I work on our iOS apps, and sometimes we'll have stuff that'll just break in the UI, and nobody will notice for a long time. So here's a recent example. We had a release where you can't see it very much, but there's a Get Directions button there, and it just disappeared. I forget what the bug was caused from, but it just disappeared, and we didn't find out till a user was like, "Hey, how do I get directions on the iPad?" And we were like, "Oh, we have that feature." And we looked, and sure enough, it wasn't there. So we have these big mobile apps. They're pretty popular. We have 5 million monthly uniques. About a third of all Yelp searches come from mobile. And our apps continue to grow in complexity as we add more and more features. So there's just a lot more things to test and to look at. So in the past, how we've kind of tried to juggle that is with a bunch of debug views. We'll have views that we can put mock data into and tap on, and we see the view with the mock data, and we can just manually say, oh, okay, this doesn't look totally broken. So this was kind of our past system, but frankly, there's no way we're going to be able to look at all of them. And even if we did, it's likely that we'd miss things that were subtle. So maybe even these like small background changes, or I don't know if any of you guys ran into the background color change on iOS 5 for group table view cells. But stuff like that that's really subtle. So I started thinking about what we could do. So I began by checking out what other UI testing frameworks existed and seeing if any of those would do what I wanted, which is check and see if the view looked right. I'm not as interested if it works. I think, in fact, in the case of that Get Directions button, it was actually there. I think it just had 0 frame or something like that. So it would show up for functional UI frameworks, but it obviously didn't look right. So I started looking at a few. I looked at UI automation, the Apple sanctioned one. It looks kind of scary to me. They use JavaScript to script all their UI interactions. Looked pretty heavy. I'm not sure if there's a way to run them at the command line. But didn't look super attractive and didn't do what I wanted. Also checked out Square's pretty cool looking UI automation stuff, and that's pretty neat. I like it because it's all in Objective-C. You write your test case in Objective-C, you control the interactions with Objective-C, and they provide easy hooks to script to control the UI. But it also doesn't check and make sure if things look right. Checked out, there's Frank and Cucumber, and they try to be Selenium for native iOS apps, but they do that by checking if an element exists, so like checking if a certain cell is in the list. There's also PhoneMonkey, which looked kind of cool. You can actually write UI tests from your device by I don't know how it works, by magic, I guess. Also UI spec. But I didn't find anything that would check and make sure that it all looked right. I didn't find anything that would have caught that case of the button existing, it just being too small to see or it being hidden. So I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Zed Shaw's programming methodology called Programming Motherfucker. But I like it. The thesis is that you should be able to do most things related to programming by programming. So I set out to solve this problem that we had of stuff disappearing in our views with programming, motherfucker. So at Yelp, we use this framework called GHUnit. It was written by, let's go out of order here. It was written by this guy, Gabriel Hanford. And he's a Yelp engineer. You can see maybe he's wearing the same jacket I am. Just a really awesome engineer, really smart guy. So he built this open source testing framework called GHUnit. It's in Objective-C. supports Mac OS X, iPhone, and iPad. But what it didn't do until about 5 a.m. this morning was view verification. So I wrote this piece that is now as part of GHUnit that renders views, saves images, and allows you to compare against previous runs so you can see exactly what changed. So here's a couple screenshots from the UI. The left is the test runner view. You can see all the tests show up in a table view. In a view failure, you can tap through and see the old and the new render of the view, and it'll raise a GHView change exception. Then you can tap into those and see a more detailed view. So here you have all three steps. You have the two side by side, and then you also have the image viewer that allows you to easily, with this control on the bottom, tap between the original image, the new image, and then, as you can see on the right, the image diff. So it's really easy to see what changed between your two runs. A little bit about how it works. So we have a script that you include as your build process when you're running tests. That copies images from past runs that you have approved into the app bundle. In your test, you call GHVerifyView. What GHVerifyView does is it renders your view to an image, checks to see if there's a previous image. If there is no previous image, it'll raise a view unavailable exception, so you have to approve it the first time. If there is an image, it'll compare it to see if it's different. If it's different, it'll raise an exception. If it's not different, the test will pass. Yeah, so we find this very useful for refactoring. So we have a lot of shared view code that we use across our code base that I'm always terrified to touch, to modify in any way. Because I'm unsure if I change this thing in our Yelp kit view class, what am I going to break? I could break any view across our whole code base. And so in the past, there wasn't an easy way to see that. I'd have to use our app a lot and see if anything looked broken. But now we have this. So let's do some code. I'm going to run through an example of what it looks like to use GHUnit for view testing purposes. So this is just a stock sample project that comes with GHUnit. The only changes you have to make to get GHUnit set up, you have to set a couple build settings that are well documented. You also have to add this build step that runs the prepare UI test script. So you copy that somewhere into your project and run it. And what that does is it takes past images that you've approved from past runs. By default, those are stored in your project directory / test images, and then it copies those as the app bundle so that it can see that whether the view has changed since the last time you approved views. So let's just run this as it is to take a look. Where is my iPhone simulator? Okay, so you can see here, if I run them, everything passes, everything's cool. So to take a look at my view test case here for test iPad view controller, let's go to my view test. So you can see all I'm doing here is I'm instantiating a version of my view controller here, and I'm calling GHVerifyView on it. So let's see what happens if I change that. So I have here this guy. What if I throw some buttons and maybe a segmented control and a label on it? Obviously broken UI here. And we run it. We run it and we see that it fails. So we can go down here and we see the old image and we see the new one with the broken UI. You can click through and see and toggle between the new and the old, and then also see the image diff. So the image diff is actually taking the first image, or rather taking the second image, inverting it, setting it to half alpha, and then overlaying it on top of the first one so that everything that's not different cancels out and becomes gray. Everything that is different becomes some other color that's not gray. So if I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted a segmented control up here, a button, a label here. That's cool with me. I can click the Approve This Change button, and then in all subsequent runs, it passes. So one thing, one caveat here is you have to then save that new run back to your version control. So I have a script for that. I added it as part of my make file to just run this script here. So let's just bypass the make file just for clarity. If I run this script, it looks up your simulator directory. It uses, anyways, that was an interesting script to write. I can tell you more details if you're interested. And then it looks for all files in the test images in your documents of your simulator app, and then copies them back to your local version control. So then I can do git status and see that, oh, in fact, that view is changed, and now I can commit it back to my version control, and then everybody that's sharing this repository, when they run it again, they'll be able to see if it's changed against this new canonical version. So let's see. Let's write a quick test case from scratch. So let's create a new view controller. New file. UIView controller subclass. My new test view controller. Let's just do it for iPhone for now. Or I don't know. The last one was iPhone. Let's do iPad. So you can run iPad view tests in the iPhone simulator and run iPhone view tests in the iPad simulator. That works just fine, as you'll see in a second. So let's put it in my iPad folder. So I have my new test view controller here. Let's add some UI to it, do some more buttons, maybe a text field, maybe a segmented control. And then let's write a test case. So writing test cases is pretty simple, as you see from here. But just to be explicit, let's go through the whole process. So we'll do new file. It's going to be a subclass of, it's called GHView test case. We'll call this my new view controller test. We'll save that to tests. Our convention is generally to get rid of the header files from the tests. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the header file and just put the interface declaration in the M file itself. We need to import GHUnit. Oops. Then we need to import our view controller we want to test. Killed this guy. So then all we have to do is write a selector, or write a method with a selector that includes test at the beginning. Pretty standard for test frameworks. Test my new view controller view. So we'll instantiate one of these. And then we'll just call GHVerify view on the view controller's view. Let me make sure. Oh, GHUnit iOS. That's why that didn't autocomplete. So then we should be able to build. Build's fine. Great. So let's run it. So now we see my new test here. We run it and it goes yellow. I set all the exceptions that are GHView unavailable exceptions go yellow. So that means you don't have a previous image saved for this view, as said in the reason here. So I can check it out. I can. This is a scroll view. So again, we're doing an iPad view in an iPhone, so it takes up more space than we have on the screen. But I can look around and be like, okay, that looks pretty right. This is a button. These guys don't really do anything. I can then approve this change, and then all subsequent runs will use that. Again, I have to copy it back into my version control if I want future runs in the simulator to have that image as a reference. But then after that, any new time I run it, it'll pass because I have the saved image. And likewise, if I change it, just like any of the other things, it'll fail. So we can see, oh, it's kind of hard to see, so then let's hit the diff. Let's look for what changed. Oh, there was a button here that changed. Yeah, so that's what it does. That's how it works. Switch back here. And that's what it is. We think it's going to be very useful for testing our code base, and it may potentially be useful for you guys as well. GHUnit is available at github.com/Gabriel/GHUnit. You could just search GHUnit. I think it's pretty high in the Google results. Very, very useful for making sure that things look right. And that's all I have.